The late afternoon sun filtered through the kitchen blinds as Patricia wiped down the granite countertop for the third time that hour. The sound of Mike's truck pulling into their suburban Denver driveway made her stomach tighten with anticipation. She had been waiting all day for news about his family's annual barbecue at Washington Park, the same event she'd been hoping to attend for the past 2 years of their marriage. Mike walked through the front door, his work boots heavy against the hardwood floor. His face carried that familiar expression she'd learned to read too well. The look of someone who'd rather be anywhere else than having the conversation ahead. "Hey babe," he said, avoiding her eyes as he hung his jacket on the coat rack. Mom called about Saturday's barbecue. Patricia felt her heart skip. "And did you tell her we'll both be there this time?" The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Mike ran his hand through his dark hair, a nervous habit she'd noticed during their courtship 3 years ago. Back then, it had seemed endearing. Now, it felt like a warning signal. "Patricia, you know how they are about crowds and photos? Mom's inviting her book club friends, and Dad's bringing his golf buddies. They want it to be, picture perfect for social media." The words hit her like ice water. Patricia's fingers unconsciously moved to her left arm, where the scars from her childhood house fire created a pattern of raised, discolored skin from her wrist to her shoulder. The same scars that had made Mike's parents suggest she might be more comfortable staying home during their engagement party. The same ones that had led to whispered conversations between Mike and his mother about what people might think. "Picture perfect," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I don't fit that picture, do I?" Mike finally met her eyes, and she saw the conflict there. Love for her warring with years of conditioning from parents who valued appearance above authenticity. "It's not about you personally, Patricia, it's just ... They have their ways." Patricia felt something shift inside her chest, a growing strength she hadn't accessed in months of swallowing her hurt and disappointment. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at her husband, this man who had promised to love and cherish her. Scars and all. "Mike," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I need you to hear me very clearly. I am your wife. We are a team. If your family can't accept me, all of me, then they're not accepting us." The kitchen fell silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of children playing in the neighborhood. Mike shifted uncomfortably, caught between two worlds he'd been trying unsuccessfully to balance. "What are you saying, Patricia?" She took a deep breath, tasting the weight of the moment. "I'm saying that if I'm not welcome at your family gatherings, then you shouldn't go either. We're married, Mike. We're supposed to be partners. It's not without me. Or it's not at all." The next morning brought an unexpected Colorado spring storm, with rain pelting against their bedroom windows as Patricia lay awake listening to Mike's restless sleep. She had spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying their conversation and wondering if she had pushed too hard, asked too much. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from her sister Emma in California. "How did the barbecue conversation go? Please tell me." Mike finally grew a spine. Patricia smiled despite her emotional exhaustion. Emma had been her fiercest advocate since the fire 22 years ago, when Patricia was just 8 years old. Emma, then 16, had held Patricia's hand through every surgery, every physical therapy session, every moment when other kids stared or whispered. The sound of Mike's phone ringing in the kitchen interrupted her thoughts. Even from upstairs, she could hear his mother's voice, sharp, insistent. The way it got when she wasn't getting her way. "Mike, darling, I hope you've talked sense into Patricia. The Hendersons are bringing their photographer's son to capture some family moments. And you know how important these memories are?" Patricia pulled on her robe and crept to the top of the stairs, not to eavesdrop but because she needed to know what kind of man she had really married. Would he buckle under his mother's pressure the way he had during their wedding planning, when she'd wanted to dictate everything from Patricia's dress to the guest list? "Mom, I need you to stop." Mike's voice was different, firmer than Patricia had heard it in their conversations about his family. "Patricia is my wife. She's not going anywhere. And frankly, I'm getting tired of these conversations. Michael David Patterson, don't you dare take that tone with me. I raised you to understand the importance of family harmony. That girl, single quotes S ... condition ... makes people uncomfortable. It's not personal." Patricia's breath caught "that girl." After 2 years of marriage, she was still that girl with a condition. But then she heard something that made her heart stop, the sound of Mike's hand slamming against the kitchen counter. "Her name is Patricia. Mom. She's not that girl. She's not a condition, and she's not going anywhere. Those scars you're so worried about, they're from a fire she survived when she was 8 years old. She lost her childhood home, her sense of security, and nearly her life. But she survived. She thrived. and she became the strongest, most beautiful woman I've ever known. Patricia sank onto the top step, tears streaming down her face as she heard her husband, really heard him, defend her for the first time since they'd met his parents. If you can't see past some scars on her arm to the incredible person she is, then that says more about you than it does about her. And if she's not welcome at family events, then neither am I. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long that Patricia wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Mike's mother spoke, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "You're choosing her over your family. I'm choosing my family, Mom. Patricia is my family now. You and Dad, you'll always be important to me. But you need to understand that when you exclude her, you exclude us both." Patricia heard footsteps and quickly retreated to their bedroom, where she pretended to be checking emails on her laptop. When Mike appeared in the doorway, his face was flushed but his eyes were clearer than she'd seen them in months. "I heard," she said softly. He crossed the room and sat on the edge of their bed. "I should have done that a long time ago. What happens now?" Mike reached for her hand, his thumb tracing gently over the scarred skin of her wrist. "Now we find out what kind of people my parents really are." Saturday arrived with a kind of perfect Colorado weather that made postcards crystal blue skies, snow-capped mountains visible in the distance, and temperatures that promised a perfect day in Washington Park. Patricia stood in front of their bedroom mirror, trying on her third outfit of the morning. The sundress she'd chosen was beautiful, a soft blue that complemented her dark hair and brought out her eyes. But it was also sleeveless, which meant her scars would be completely visible. For years, she'd mastered the art of strategic dressing. Long sleeves in summer, cardigans that couldn't be removed, carefully positioned accessories that drew attention away from her left arm. "You look beautiful," Mike said from behind her, his reflection appearing over her shoulder in the mirror. "I look scared," she admitted. "That's okay. I'm scared too." He wrapped his arms around her waist. "But we're doing this together." At 11:30, Mike's phone rang. Patricia felt her stomach drop. They were supposed to be at the park by noon. But she'd been secretly hoping the call would never come, that somehow the whole situation would resolve itself without confrontation. "It's Dad," Mike said, showing her the screen. Unlike his mother's sharp tones, Mike's father had always been the peacemaker in the family, the one who smoothed over conflicts with gentle humor and diplomatic solutions. Patricia had always liked Robert Patterson, which made his participation in her exclusion all the more painful. "Son," Robert's voice was unusually formal when Mike put the call on speaker. "Your mother and I have been talking, and we've decided we'd like you both to come today." Patricia and Mike exchanged glances. "It felt too easy, too neat. Both of us?" Mike asked carefully. "Yes, both of you. We realize we may have been insensitive to Patricia's feelings. We'd like to make things right." Patricia felt a mixture of hope and skepticism. In her experience, people didn't change their deeply held prejudices overnight, especially when those prejudices were dressed up as concern for others' comfort. "Dad, I need you to be clear about something. Patricia doesn't need to hide who she is or cover up to make other people comfortable. If you're inviting us, you're inviting all of us." There was a pause. "We understand, son. We'll see you both at noon." An hour later, they pulled into the Washington Park parking area, where Patricia could see the familiar cluster of picnic tables decorated with red checkered tablecloths. The Patterson family barbecue was a well-orchestrated affair, complete with Mike's uncle manning the grill, his cousins setting up volleyball nets, and various family friends contributing side dishes and conversation. As they approached the group, Patricia noticed the subtle shift in energy conversations that paused mid-sentence, glances that lingered a moment too long, the careful politeness that masked discomfort. But she also noticed Mike's hand firmly holding hers, his posture straight and protective. "Patricia." "Mike." Robert Patterson approached them with arms outstretched, his smile genuine but slightly strained. "So glad you could make it." Mike's mother Patricia followed behind with an expression Patricia couldn't quite read. Patricia had always been impeccably dressed, and gracious in that particular way that made people feel both welcomed and judged simultaneously. "Patricia, dear," Patricia said, her eyes flickering briefly to Patricia's arm before meeting her gaze. "You look lovely. That color is wonderful on you." It was progress, Patricia supposed, but she could feel the effort it took for Patricia to maintain normal eye contact, to resist staring at the scars that were fully visible in the bright afternoon sun. The afternoon unfolded with careful politeness on all sides. Patricia helped with food preparation, joined conversations about gardening and local politics, and even participated in a casual volleyball game where her athletic ability surprised some of the family friends, who had clearly expected her to be more limited by her scars. But it was during the group photo session that the real test came. Henderson's photographer's son had arrived with professional equipment, arranging family groupings with an artist's eye for composition and lighting. "Okay, let's get the whole family together," he called out, gesturing for everyone to gather under the large oak tree that served as the traditional backdrop for Patterson family photos. Patricia hesitated, old insecurities surfacing. In photos, her scars were always visible, always the thing people noticed first. But before she could step back or suggest she take the picture instead, she felt Mike's arm slip around her waist. "Come on, Mrs. Patterson," he said with a grin that reminded her why she'd fallen in love with him. "Your family?" As they positioned themselves in the group, Patricia noticed Patricia's friend Joan, one of the book club members, who had been part of the original concern about Patricia's presence, staring openly at her arm. Patricia felt her cheeks burn with familiar shame. But then something unexpected happened. Mike's cousin Lisa, whom Patricia had always found intimidating, moved to stand directly beside her. "I love your dress, Patricia," Lisa said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "And I have to ask, I've been too chicken to say anything before, but I've always wanted to know about your scars. They look like they have quite a story." The question hung in the air like a challenge. Patricia felt every eye in the group turn toward her, and for a moment, the familiar panic rose in her chest. This was exactly the kind of attention she'd spent years trying to avoid, the scrutiny that made her want to disappear. But as she looked around the circle of faces, some curious, some uncomfortable, some genuinely interested, she realized something had shifted. Mike's hand was steady on her back, his presence unwavering beside her. And for the first time in years, she didn't want to hide. "They do have a story," Patricia said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "When I was 8, our house caught fire in the middle of the night. My sister Emma got me out, but not before the flames caught my arm and shoulder." She paused, looking directly at Joan, whose expression had softened from judgment to something approaching compassion. "I spent 3 months in the hospital, had 6 surgeries, and did 2 years of physical therapy. For a long time, I thought these scars were the worst thing that had ever happened to me. But you know what I learned?" The photographer had lowered his camera, drawn into the story like everyone else. "I learned that surviving something that should have killed you changes how you see everything else. I learned that the people who matter don't see scars when they look at you, they see strength. And I learned that hiding who you are to make other people comfortable is just another kind of prison." Mike squeezed her hand, his eyes bright with pride and something else, relief. Maybe that she was finally sharing her story instead of bearing it alone. Patricia Patterson stepped forward, and for a moment Patricia thought she might face another rejection. But instead, Mike's mother reached out and gently touched Patricia's scarred arm. "I owe you an apology," Patricia said, her voice thick with emotion. "I was so worried about what other people might think that I forgot the most important thing. You're part of our family, and family doesn't hide from each other." The photographer cleared his throat. "If everyone's ready, let's take that picture." As they repositioned themselves, Patricia noticed that no one was staring anymore. The revelation of her story had somehow transformed the scars from something shameful into something powerful, evidence of survival, of strength, of a life fully lived despite its challenges. The camera clicked multiple times, capturing images Patricia knew she would treasure. Mike's arm around her shoulders, his parents flanking them with genuine smiles, the extended family and friends arranged in the dappled sunlight under the oak tree. Later, as they helped clean up the picnic area, Joan approached Patricia with hesitant steps. "I hope you don't mind me asking earlier," she said. "I have a granddaughter who was in a car accident last year. She has scars too, and she's been so self-conscious about them. Would you maybe be willing to talk to her sometime?" Patricia felt something warm bloom in her chest, the realization that her story, her visibility, might actually help someone else. "I'd be honored," she said. As they drove home that evening, Patricia rolled down the window and let the Colorado air rush through her hair. The mountains were turning purple in the sunset, and the city lights were beginning to twinkle in the valley below. "Thank you," she said to Mike. "For what? For finally choosing us?" Mike reached over and took her hand, his thumb tracing the familiar pattern of her scars, not with pity or discomfort, but with the kind of love that sees beauty in survival, strength in vulnerability. "I should have chosen us from the beginning," he said, "but I'm glad we got here eventually." Patricia smiled, watching the familiar landscape of their life together roll past the window. She thought about the photo session, about Joan's granddaughter, about all the other people hiding parts of themselves to make others comfortable. Tomorrow, she decided, she would wear sleeveless shirts more often. Not because she had to prove anything, but because she wanted to. Because she was tired of hiding. And because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is simply be yourself, completely and unapologetically. Not without me, she said softly, more to herself than to Mike. Never without you, he replied, understanding perfectly. Never again. As they pulled into their driveway, Patricia saw their house with new eyes. Not just as a place they lived, but as a home they had fought for, a sanctuary they had built together. And for the first time since their wedding day, she felt like they were truly partners in every sense of the word. The scars on her arm caught the last rays of sunlight as she reached for the car door handle. And for once, she didn't try to hide them.